Many people like to say, well, aren't all religions the same? The problem about that is what you mean by religion, because a lot of people nowadays like to divide society into people who are religious and people who aren't. But I'd like to suggest that either everyone's religious or no one is. I don't mind which you choose, but it seems to me that someone who doesn't believe in God is not less religious than someone who does. Because what we find is that everyone has values. They assign values to things, and values don't come from science. Science can't tell you how much something's worth. Science can't even tell you that science is worth anything. So everyone has values, and that seems to me something we can all talk about. Of course, as a Christian, I have values, and they come from the Bible, they come from the Christian scriptures, things that we believe God has said. But I also think that atheists and agnostics and other people have values. That's what makes them get out of bed in the morning. That's what makes them go and do things, is they actually are assigning value to things. So I think this idea that the world is made up of people who are religious and people who aren't isn't very helpful. Then, of course, when people say, well, isn't it sincerity that matters? You know, provided you're sincere about your religion, that's fine. But the problem is sincerity is a very difficult thing. I think Osama bin Laden, Stalin and Hitler were all sincere. They all believed in the causes that they promoted. But of course we know that they all did terrible things. So sincerity isn't enough. Now you've got to search after the truth. And that's where the Christian message has something really unique. That is, the Christian message is based on historical claims about what Jesus Christ said and did, and that he died and that he rose again after 3 days. And those are the sorts of things that you can investigate. With the Bible, you can investigate it. It's not just claiming to be a holy book. It's telling you about the history of Israel. It's telling you about the history of God's people. Now you might say, well, how can I trust the Bible? One of the things I'd say is the Old Testament, the first part of the Bible, tells you about the history of Israel. I don't know any people group whose national literature says as much bad about the group from which it originates as the Old Testament. So why would anyone make up a story which said so much bad about the group it came from? But that's what the Old Testament does. So I think that's a hallmark of credibility. Then you come to the New Testament and you read the accounts of Jesus and his early followers in the Gospels. And one of the things you learn is that all 12 of his early followers, his disciples, well, one of them betrayed him and the other 11 ran away. And the chief disciple denied him 3 times. So we find that these are not accounts which are made up in order to make the early leaders of Christianity look smart. In fact, they show exactly the opposite. So I'd want to say that when you look at the Gospels, they are things that you can trust, and that with Christianity you have something that you really can test. It's not just a question of being sincere, it's also making sure that you are following the truth. You might not think there's a fire in the building, or you might think there is a fire in the building. But being sincere in your belief isn't the question. The question is there a fire in the building or not? And that's why we need to think with the claims of Christianity that Jesus is God's message to humanity, that Jesus is God's Son who's come to show us who he is. The real question is that true or not? And I'd encourage you to read the Bible to find out.